If you see, I'm not saying you shouldn't help one cross the road. If you want to make sure you can help one cross the road, like any turtle species, and do that, like you can always try to hold them kind of from further back on their shell. If you hold them like this, it's fine, but they do have very strong legs, so they can kind of push you away. So yeah, but they seem to be doing really well here. This is a male. He has like the reddish eye here. Sometimes females have a reddish brown eye, but he has a more red eye, and then he has this concavity here underneath on his plastron, which is that underside of the shell. And so he is a male. He doesn't have any noticeable damage on him, which is great. He's definitely very old. Box turtles can live to be, in a perfect world, like 100 years old. There have been some records of that. All right, so this is part of a long-term monitoring project of the eastern box turtles in New York City and out on Long Island. Most of our sites are on Long Island because the population of box turtles is just more dense there nowadays with all the road networks and everything, but there is still a healthy population of box turtles on Staten Island, which is what has brought us here today. And so this is actually only year 2 of the project, but we're hoping to continue it indefinitely so that we can really get a sense of the overall health of the population and make sure that it continues to succeed into the future. So,
are there a lot of box turtles in the Greenbelt?
A lot is maybe generous. There aren't necessarily a lot of box turtles in the Greenbelt, but what I can tell you is that when we started doing these surveys here last year, I didn't think we'd find any. So I've been really pleased that we found so many here. And one thing with the box turtles is they are a species of special concern. They have been reporting there have been declines of this species across their distribution for many decades now. They're absolutely gorgeous. What we do say is if anyone sees one, just leave it alone.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah,
okay.
Don't pick it up. Don't take it out of its habitat.
So what if you see one on the road?
If you see one on the road, 2 things can happen. So one, if you see it on the road and it's walking across the street, you can help it go in the direction it's going. Do not turn it around. Okay. These turtles have incredible homing ability. So if you were to move it, you're like, oh, you're going here, but I think I know better habitat for you. Then they're gonna get back to where they were going, and it potentially might allow them to cross the road multiple more times than they would.
So if you pick them up, do they bite?
Not really. I mean, like, I'm not saying you should like put your finger in his mouth, but they're not like snappers or like sliders in the ponds where they have these really sharp beaks and they bite a lot.
So like the bigger turtles, you wouldn't advise someone picking them up?
I would not.
Okay.
These guys, I mean, again, like, if you see, I'm not saying you shouldn't help one cross the road. If you want to make sure you can help one cross the road, like any turtle species, and do that, like you can always try to hold them kind of from further back on their shell. If you hold them like this, it's fine, but they do have very strong legs, so they can kind of push you away. These guys, I've only been bit a few times, but they've never drawn blood or anything. It just kind of feels like getting a really tight pinch because they don't have, their beaks aren't as sharp as you know, sliders or snappers. And so yeah, but they seem to be doing really well here. This is a male. He has like the reddish eye here. Sometimes females have a reddish brown eye, but he has a more red eye, and then he has this concavity here underneath on his plastron, which is that underside of the shell. And so he is a male. He doesn't have any noticeable damage on him, which is great. He's definitely very old. Box turtles can live to be, in a perfect world, like 100 years old. There have been some records of that.
Wow, okay.
Obviously, with the way the world is and infrastructure development, everything, I don't think they often live nearly as long as
So some of these turtles could have been here since like the early Greenbelt when it was first formed and everything. That's crazy.
Yeah, and there was a reintroduction program here decades ago, but then they did that and no one did surveys after that. Nothing happened. And so then essentially when we were trying to establish this project, I wanted to have a range of sites that spanned kind of like a level of urbanization surrounding the greener areas. So obviously box turtles are found in forests or in woodlands or in fields, but there's an amount of area around there that is like urbanized, you know, the road networks. And so this was like my more urbanized site. And I didn't know if we'd have a healthy population.
So is there something we could do as neighbors of these turtles to help them, or?
Definitely make sure the Greenbelt stays the Greenbelt and stays, this is a good habitat for them. There's a lot of really great habitat here. And number one detriment to these turtles, well, I should say there's 2, but the number 1 is habitat loss. Number 2 is definitely like road networks. And then number 3 is also dogs and like predation from raccoons and stuff. So this is a wildlife detection dog. His name is Newt. Dr. Chris Hoffman here is his handler.
Hey, Newt.
And Newt is amazing at finding these turtles. And the thing is that obviously you can train dogs to not, like, Newt does not even pick up the turtle,
Right.
but you know, a lot of dogs have prey drive, and they will see something moving, and they will puncture the
So when
shell.
people let dogs off the leash here, it could be
really bad if the dog was to have a natural instinct for finding a turtle or having some amount of prey drive. And raccoons too are a really big problem. They predate the eggs a lot too of these turtles. Obviously that's harder for us to control as just, you know, members of the public. We can't just control the raccoons. And I totally understand the value of dogs being off leash and being able to run around, but making sure that you know what your dog is doing if you're going to do that, especially, I think, is important, because I know the people that come through these types of areas, like, they love nature. That's usually why they're here. So I can't imagine they would ever be happy with their dog hurting, declining, and, you know, it's not considered endangered, but species of special concern in New York State. So, you know, just to make sure that we're doing our best to preserve what habitat they have left, to make sure they don't get attacked by dogs. If you see them crossing a road, help it go the direction it's going. Please don't assume you know a better habitat for it, because it's going to try to get back anyway. And yeah, I mean, anything you want to add, Chris?
I think that was pretty good coverage.
What about foxes? We have foxes now as of like a few years.
Yeah, we saw one here actually. I saw one here last week. It was
Oh,
bouncing
wow.
through the woods. I'm sure foxes are like dogs and that they're going to try to eat them, but the good thing with foxes, at least they're native. So
And they're so small compared to a dog.
yeah, like some dog, I mean, my dog is 170 pounds. He has absolutely no prey drive. But if he did, and he came across a turtle, he could kill that thing so fast. And even a lot smaller dogs can. And foxes also, like, you're going to have more dogs encountering turtles just because people walk their dogs here all the time than you have foxes in this population. Like, you might have foxes, but there's not going to be as
So
many.
is this a good indicator that these forests are healthy, or?
I would say so. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different invasive plant species here, which is just the case in any area where you have urbanization. But I mean, these box turtles are reproductively active. Like, we are finding very young individuals all the time. And so, you know, you wouldn't have reproduction if it wasn't having, if the forest itself didn't have the resources to support that population. We are going to be able to run some genetic analyses on these turtles to look at genetic diversity and relatedness. We are also going to be looking at diet and also contaminant analysis, so we can see if they're bioaccumulating, any contaminants, I don't know what it might be here, but things like that. And then we can look at overall body condition, rates of injury or damage, if we ever see any signs of disease. So it's really just meant to be as comprehensive as an assessment as possible for the population. And so I'm hoping, again, that we can do this indefinitely. The more data we collect, the more informed we'll be about this population. And these guys, people really love the box turtles, and I mean, I wish everyone loved all animals as much as people love box turtles, but if we can use these box turtles to convince people of the benefit of preserving land like this, then that's, you know, that's really important too.
And I know we're not really supposed to look for them, but where are they found? They found upland, more near the water, like?
Yeah, so I mean, they like woodlands, uplands, but upland, they're kind of everywhere.
They're not an aquatic turtle.
They're not an aquatic.
Terrestrial
Yeah,
turtle.
yeah, they're not an aquatic turtle. So, like sliders, snappers, spotted turtles, all of those are aquatic turtles and will spend a lot more time near bodies of water. We've noticed that they might sometimes be, like, sometimes you see more of them somewhat adjacent to water bodies, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that near water bodies you have more moisture in the soil. More moisture might mean more grubs, more fungi, more things that they eat. But we see them all around. They like patches of sun and like lower vegetation surrounded by trees. It's really exactly the type of habitat that a lot of the Greenbelt has overall. So yeah, we've been really excited about this site, and sometimes it's a pain to get to from where I am deep on Long Island, but it absolutely is worth it every time because we find a bunch of these guys.
All right,
So
thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And
Actually, these were the turtles I think they were trying to find in the Graniteville wetlands before they cut that all down.
what's the Graniteville wetlands?
It's over on, it was on Forest Avenue and South Avenue. It's like this, where they're building the BJ's now. And they cut the whole thing down because they were supposed to look for them and they couldn't find
well,
them.
that was an endangered
They're really-
turtle.
yeah,
Is that
they're-
the same one, or?
So the thing with these turtles is that, so the International Union for the Conservation of Nature lists them as vulnerable, which is a threat category. They are considered threatened within their whole distribution. However, they have not been assessed for 14 years. And Long Island and New York City represents the most urbanized portion of their entire range. So I actually almost think it would be worthwhile to have a separate assessment that's like a regional assessment just based on this area. Because like down in North Carolina, Virginia, they're a lot more common. And so I'm not saying that like we shouldn't say that those ones are like less threatened. I mean, we kind of should, I guess. Those are less threatened. But
somehow they're behaviorally surviving. So if these turtles have some adaptation that allows them to live in more urban areas, then maybe we can mimic new habitat in other places. Or like, why are they here but they're not in Boston?
Yeah.
Like, what is New York doing to preserve them that's working for this population?
yeah.
And then we can do that in Baltimore and other places.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a really amazing species that has persevered through a lot of development in the area, and so I definitely think, yeah, like, and the thing to your point about how they couldn't find them, it's because they're really hard to find. That's why we hire a wildlife detection dog
so
team.
if they really had wanted to find them, they needed to have a dog to
They
find
should
them?
have done it.
Because they didn't find them. That's what had happened.
I think it's very possible. I mean, Kaylin is our first, behind you, our first volunteer of the day that's found one.
Hi, Kim.
So, like, volunteers can do a really great job because they're out here and they're looking, and we've kind of tried to help them understand where to look. But I mean, on top of that, when sometimes we have sites where the volunteers will find very few and the dog finds most of them. Last year alone, Newt was 11 times more efficient than a single human searcher. So it does make a really big difference. It is weather dependent and site dependent because we can't obviously understand all the nuances of a dog's nose. But I think that it's really easy for people to be like, oh, well, they're not here, so we can develop on it. And it's probably more likely that you just didn't see them.
So how did you become interested in turtles as your focus of research?
So I actually work on lizards and turtles.
Oh, okay.
And I have been very passionate about them since I was very young. My mom actually sent me a thing a few weeks ago that my preschool teacher wrote to me when I was 4 years old that said, I love talking to you about lizards and turtles. So it's apparently been my life forever. But I completed my PhD at Stony Brook, and I work a lot on the anolis lizards in the Caribbean. But one of my lab mates in that lab group when I was at Stony Brook worked on the box turtles, and then she's from Kansas and she moved back Midwest. And when she left, she kept connecting people with me because they're like, oh, well, Anna's still there. And she works on the lizards, but she has experience with the turtles because she's helped me. And then I ended up giving a talk at the Long Island Natural History Conference, which is a really incredible meeting. And one of the wildlife biologists from CTUC, which is CTUC Environmental Association, it's like one of the largest conservation nonprofits on Long Island, and then their director, Enrico, so it was Mike Bettini, who was the biologist, they approached me and they said, how would you feel about starting a long-term monitoring project on the box turtles? And I was like, yeah, I mean, that would be amazing. But I said to them, I don't have infinite time to survey all day, every day, so we need to be really efficient and effective in our surveys. So I said, I want to be able to hire a wildlife detection dog team so that we can be really, really effective on the days we survey. And so that's how Chris and Newt got brought in. And Chris has her own company called Bark and Code, where she does this and is really incredible and works a lot with the Conservation Dogs Alliance. And so that's kind of how it got started. And I've always loved all reptiles. I'm an ecologist and conservation biologist who specializes in reptiles. But it was kind of like the turtle thing. I don't want to say it fell in my lap. It just kind of felt like all the right circumstances kind of came together. And I was still out here, and my boss at NYU was supportive of it. So I said, okay, let's run with it. And it's worked out really
every
well.
year for the mosquitoes. So you might end up finding like anvil and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that we want to know about. And yeah, so it'll be really, really interesting to see how the results are looking. And I think one of the cool parts of this study is because we have such an array of different site types, we're able to really understand, why are some turtles doing better in some places than others, or maybe these turtles have more contaminants than another site, and like what does that mean for the turtle? So it's informative if site A has 25% of turtles are damaged, but if that's ubiquitous across all the sites, then that's not informative. But by having site A is 25% damage, but site B is like 80% damage, what's going on at site B? So you can actually have these comparative analyses to help you understand.
Absolutely. And what's your name?
I'm Anna. Yeah.
And your department is at NYU?
I am in the biology department at NYU, in the Winchell lab. So the professor that I work with, where I'm a postdoc, her name's Kristen Winchell. She's also a herpetologist. And our group focuses entirely on how urbanization is impacting wildlife. So one of my lab mates is actually working on the pigeons in New York City. One of them's working on the lanternflies. Another one's going to be working on the same lizards that I work on in the Caribbean, but trying to understand how they are responding to artificial light at night. And then I am also working, so box turtles, the lizards in the Caribbean, and then I also work on the Italian wall lizards, which are not native to New York, but we have them all over. They're native to Italy, introduced in the 60s. So for me, my research interest as a biologist is trying to understand the various impacts of global change and how that impacts reptiles specifically. So as a postdoc, I'm focusing more on urbanization, but during my PhD, I focused more on climate change and extreme weather. So,
Thank you so much.
Why don't you tell them a little bit about people who used to find them all the time? Like those
yeah, that's a great point. So one thing that's been super interesting about this work is we have over 90 volunteers across the 2.5 weeks of surveys, which has been incredible. But what we've noticed is that so many volunteers that grew up in Staten Island or on Long Island have all of these stories about how many box turtles they used to see. And it's kind of almost horrifying because they'll say, oh, I would just be raking my yard and I would see 2 or 3 in an afternoon. And it is simply not like that anymore, pretty much anywhere in Long Island or New York City. And it's all of this anecdotal evidence of people saying time and time and time again of how many box turtles they used to see and how sad they are that they don't see them now. And so, although we have all of that evidence anecdotally, we don't have it quantitatively. And so when we're trying to actually, work with towns or counties or even the state to have legislative action take place or different actions take place to help protect the turtles better, they're like, how do you know they declined? You don't have the data. And it's true, we don't actually have the data. We just have word of mouth, but from so many people. And so the sentiment has been recurring over and over and over again to the point that you don't need to convince me. I believe them. But now we're at a point where I'm like, okay, well, let's see how the ones are doing that we still have. And then, if we can continue this long term, hopefully we can see if populations start doing better or if a population's doing worse, and then what can we do to help it? But if we don't have any baseline data, there is nothing for us to build on.
Okay, thank you.
The policymakers, they need that data and
they need the data.
So how did you get into this stuff with the dog?
I'm a herpetologist as well, so I studied reptiles and amphibians. And when I was in junior high school, I was on a citizen science project as a volunteer where we were in Massachusetts looking for spotted turtles. And it was something fun to do with my dad. And I'd be out there like hours looking to try to find one turtle. And I was just like, this would be so much easier with a dog.
Right.
I had no idea dogs were this cool. But like, I've kept that with me, and through all of my education, I kept on being like, okay, I'm going to read about dogs in my spare time. I'm going to go to dog training classes. And eventually I was in a point in my career where I was ready to get a high drive police quality dog. And I'm glad he wasn't my first dog, because I probably would never get another one. He's so much work and he's so loud and he's a bowling ball. But he's really good at this because he has the obsession with the ball. He'll go through anything to get it. He'll cross rivers. He would jump off of cliffs to get that ball. So if I ask him like, okay, we're going to spend 6 hours looking for turtles, he's like, okay. And then when he finds one, he lays down next to it, and that's his indication that the turtle is there. I go over, I'm like, okay, either I don't see it, poke it with your nose for me. I'll say, show me, and he just boops it. Or I'll see it right away and I'll just take it, and then I throw the ball for him for 20 minutes, and that's his motivation.
And do they eat bugs? Is that kind of what the turtle's diet is?
Bugs, slugs, earthworms.
Berries.
Yeah, they're one of the few
fungi.
turtles that can eat on land. So fungi. Yeah.
Fungi, berries.
Sometimes we find them and they have like a slug mustache.
Okay, thank you guys very much. Really appreciate it.